Welcome to the show, everybody. Michael with CoronavirusDiaries, and today I'm fortunate enough to be able to speak again with Theresa May, the owner of Heaven on Earth Healing. Theresa, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So for the viewers and the listeners that maybe haven't seen other sessions with you or aren't familiar with Heaven on Earth Healing, can you share a little bit about who are you and what do you do?
Sure. I started my business about 22 years ago in Stillwater, Minnesota, as a practitioner of shiatsu, Chinese medicine, Reiki, Qigong, energy healing, past life regression, hypnotherapy, life coaching, meditation, a whole bunch of different things underneath the umbrella of mind-body integrative therapies.
Okay, so is all of these things kind of considered holistic healing, or is that kind of the
Yes.
the genre of things? Okay.
Yeah.
Before we started this session, we're just catching up, and I was asking, how have things been since the last time we talked? And you had mentioned a little bit about stuff that you've been addressing with your workflow, and I'm curious if you wouldn't mind going into, this is all relatively new for you, pushing your business online and trying to maintain some resemblance of this Heaven on Earth Healing, what you've developed, but you've also been identifying some things that are necessary to manage a little bit more. Like, would you mind going into that a little bit?
Sure, not a problem. Well, first of all, yeah, it was all new to me of, how to manage or how to create a YouTube channel and how to utilize social media more. I'm still learning. There's so much to learn. But yeah, I would say that the first week of April, I started really falling into a certain flow with getting my my morning messages out there to the folks, and then having a reflection in the evening. So I'm hoping to create community where people feel supported through this pandemic. And to me, it's been a wonderful way to stay in the spiritual place of what my purpose is, what Heaven on Earth is here to do, and that is to be an inspiration, to offer healing and wisdom that supports our body, mind, and spirit, and to recreate heaven here on earth. So my schedule now is pretty consistent. I'm putting out my recordings for these a card a day morning messages, and then the evening reflections, and then beyond that, I've been adding and teaching myself how to utilize new programs, just scheduling
All the different
programs.
types of software and everything.
Yes.
Yeah. It's great though. It's been interesting
Yeah.
to see how it's been developing for you.
Yeah.
You had mentioned live sessions. You're uploading these regular videos. You're sharing insights and knowledge on some stuff that you've studied or that you research and you integrate into your own workflow. But now you're looking at doing live sessions.
Yeah, eventually, yes. I think we did talk a little bit about that at the end of our last session. I plan on having a monthly meditation group, the Global Peace Meditation Group, just to get people into that practice of meditation and to, raise the vibe, of the planet. But that's just the beginning. That is just the beginning. What I see is that I will be forming groups for life coaching, where, it's this material never changes in life coaching. When people are coming in because they're stuck in an area of their life, my job is to get them unstuck, but there's always a sequence of different topics that I have to cover to make sure that those things are really understood and integrated, so that the change work is like easy.
Is this kind of like the triad of like mind, body, and soul, or is that?
No, it's way more than that. It includes our belief systems. Are they limiting beliefs or are they supporting beliefs? our value systems, how values can be in conflict with each other. Like, I really want to go over here and do the buffet thing, but I really will regret it over here. And I'll eat that salad that, has living food in it instead. So those are two different value systems, right? And people get stuck in, that inner conflict that they're continually being, challenged with.
Sure.
So I feel like there's a lot that group coaching can offer for people. One, it's really inexpensive compared to one-to-one services with me. I
Okay.
charge a lot less, and we're covering the same material, especially for the first, I don't know, probably the first 4 sessions will be really groundwork that will help people change their lives just by becoming aware of their belief systems and their values and their decisions and their attitudes about life and all that. So that's one group. And then I have another group that I've been wanting to give birth to, and this year it's going to happen. I just know I don't have an exact date yet.
So
But
out of curiosity, what is it that's preventing you right now from just starting, from just doing a live session and saying, all right, let's make it happen? Because it sounds like you've done some live work already with people internationally even. What's preventing you right now? Is it?
I think it's the technology piece again. I have to visit the technology piece and get it here in my head of, okay, step 1, do this, step 2, do that, and then step 3, press record or
Sure.
turn it on or whatever. Yeah, I don't really understand how all that works yet, but I'm working on that, and I would say in the next couple of days. And the other thing that I would say prevents me is that time management of, I'm really busy right now, at least 4 hours a day, doing those recordings every day. And then I'm also working with clients, one-to-one.
Still trying to pay the bills while you're still trying to develop and build something up.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah. So it's
So
really important to do both. And then I'm also, having to learn how to use MailChimp and
it's the steep learning curves for transitioning from basically a brick and mortar face-to-face type of business to 100% online digital, chat rooms and that. I'm curious, when we were chatting before when we were just catching up before we started this, we were kind of discussing like, what would you like to talk about? I'd shared, a recent session I was in talked about, business stuff in relation to this. But at one point you had made a comment because of something I had said that you were like, well, why don't we can talk about woo-woo medicine. And I'm curious, right? Like woo-woo medicine. Like if somebody that's not a part of this community that really digs into this type of a system, if they say woo-woo medicine, is it considered derogative or negative as opposed to somebody that's really in it like you, and they're like, and you're like, what is woo-woo medicine? What does that even mean? I love it.
I can laugh at myself, really. I think it's a funny term because there are negative connotations toward people who are more holistic and into holistic or natural medicine and stuff. And now I can just laugh about it because it's like, so what? Yeah, it's woo woo, but what I mean by woo woo, I mean holistic. You're not just this meat suit. You're
Yeah.
not just this ego personality that's running around going crazy once in a while or telling jokes or going to a football game. You're more than that. You're a spirit. You're a soul. You came here to do a certain purpose in life. You came here to have fun, but you also came here to go beyond just this, game of pretending to be a human being when you're really a spiritual being having a human experience. So it's just a different perspective. So, I mean, I live in that realm because I kind of walk in both worlds. Yeah, it was kind of interesting because 22 years ago when I first opened my doors in Stillwater, I decided I was going to have a psychic reading by a woman I never met. It was a phone interview I had with her. from Oregon, and I think she's probably passed on by now. But when she did my reading, she said, Theresa, you're a Capricorn, so that makes you really material. You're part of the earth, you're part of this three-dimensional reality. You're very in this physical world, but you also have this spiritual energy. You came in here to really explode with spiritual evolution, to gain all this wisdom and then to teach it. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so that's kind of perplexing. She goes, well, yeah, and she could even feel the inner conflict within myself between these two worlds, So, so I've been aware of my path for a long time. That's been affirmed, and she really was an instrument of that whole thing. So, intuition and psychic stuff doesn't even really faze me anymore. I trust it because I've developed that trust, along the years that have passed by, ever since
So,
I was a kid, actually.
yeah. So with the you're doing these morning videos where you have a deck of cards, and I'm not really familiar with this myself, but I'm curious. The only cards that I've ever been familiar with myself, I've heard, were tarot cards, and it was like the fortune reading type of stuff that you might see, the crystal ball type of scenario, right? And
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are the cards that you're using? Like, what is it? What is it? What are these cards, and what are they supposed to tell you?
Well, first of all, let me demystify it a little bit, because
Please.
I'm not putting my hands over a crystal ball.
You're not floating right now? You're not hovering on? Okay.
No, I don't have a gypsy wagon out in the back. And so one thing that's really important for all the viewers, if you ever want to seek out someone who is intuitive or psychic or a medium of some sort, you want to know what their spiritual maturity is, because that really will make a difference on what information comes through and how accurate it is. And what I mean by this is, if you talk to a kindergartner and their language level is at a kindergartner language, and they start funneling through information, they have to they're interpreting through a kindergartner language level. If they're a college level, have language of a college professor, and they're being funneled information, their vocabulary is much wider, much more mature, and more balanced and grounded. So, I can kind of laugh a little bit at some of the spiritual woo-woo community, because half of them, or over half of them, are just there like, "Ooh, let me tell you about your future and how it's going to happen," and that's not how it's supposed to be. Our destiny is not solid ever. By 5 minutes from now, our decision to do something different will have changed the trajectory in an instant. It's readings. Intuitive readings are really meant to guide us in what's for our highest good, or what are we currently operating at, and how can we change it if we so choose.
So intuition is, you're saying it's more than like a gut feeling, like, oh, should I do this? Like maybe you have a gut feeling saying, yeah, probably not. You're saying intuition is something entirely different than that.
No, I think that is part of your intuition. Your internal guidance system is always there if you're listening to it, and it's much more heightened if you know that you're in a high risk situation. Like people who are mountain climbers, they have to be in the moment, listening to every little detail of what they're doing, because it's life or death for them. And that's when their intuition, their internal GPS is totally on. They're totally paying attention. It's our day-to-day life that we tend to ignore it most of the time, and or doubt it. We can doubt it easily too.
Speaking of a doubt, I think probably one of the biggest things for me, I actually did when I was living in Thailand. A friend had taken me and it was the most, and I grew up religious. I was baptized, and I went but for most of my life, it's just been try to be a good person, right? I don't actively pursue religion as much as I just try to be a good person, right? But I have had a session with somebody that it was numerology though, and I don't.
Mhm. Sure.
It was the most interesting experience that I've had, where they took a bunch of number information, put it into this chart, and they basically started giving me a bunch of information back that I don't know how they could have figured it out, right? And it wasn't like fortune cookie stuff. They
No,
actually
they go by your name. They go by your full name, your birth, your
birth,
date of
yeah.
birth, and all of those numbers there's a whole system that
But
relates
leading,
to
like even before that though, I think because I always had this difficulty with like, okay, you would see fortune teller or psychics, right? That there's some shows where they've been like highly discredited because there's like, oh, somebody got murdered, like, yeah, and there's like, get the psychic to find out this stuff, and or there's just people, they'll bring them on game shows, and they'll have them try to do this thing, and they're like, well, yeah, and they discredit them. So I think there's a fine line somewhere that, it sounds like even you are saying that there are some people that are in this industry, if you will, that, you need to tread lightly and you need to kind of, find what works. But
you
how
need to
do you,
I think it's important that you find someone that at least the way they live their life is it resonates with the way you live your life. I think that's the best way to say it. I will attract people that are trying to live a good life, that are seeking to get unstuck and have more joy in their life.
yeah,
So they're more attracted to me. I am not, and I will quickly turn or refer people away from me to somebody else if they're saying, "Oh, could you tell me my fortune?" And
because
what
that's
I'll
what they're
do.
seeking. They're seeking very specific
Right.
feedback.
Right. And I don't do that. I don't do that. And I don't really work with tarot cards. I have a fetish for oracle cards, which is it's different than a typical tarot deck. And I really don't want to say anything bad about tarot because some of my friends do a really good job with tarot readings. I just,
You found
it's
what works
different.
for you.
Yeah, I find what works for me and they find what works for them, and I have a fetish with all kinds of cards. I swear to God. Okay, here's one.
So if
Here's another
what
one.
what would you say, or how would you respond to if somebody were to say, it's in the realm of like witchcraft, or something like that? How, because that is something that I've heard in, it's
Okay, so the church will discredit people that use their intuition and or psychic ability or whatever, and they'll call it witchcraft. Well, the church has a history of burning women at the stake for um, being holistic herbalists and making medicine out of plants and using their intuition, which was part of our natural gift that God gave us to begin with. That the church thought, no, only men who are high levels of the church are allowed to use that. Only they listen or talk to God, and they will speak to the people and tell us what we should know. And so I really,
you have
I guess
your
that's history too, folks. Just go look in the
uh,
history books.
yeah, wasn't
There's
it if they
over
float?
1 million people burned at the stake, accused of being witches, and made it to be something evil. Now, I'm not saying that paganism or Wicca there's a whole lot of different belief systems just around that topic. And again, follow your path that feels good and wholesome and you know
you know
resonates well with you.
Speaking of pagan and Wiccan, though, I have a friend, an acquaintance in my social circles that is pagan, and they put it in their social media, right? And I never really understood it. I think everybody should have the right to their own, religious or spiritual freedoms, as long as they're not hurting others. But at one point in time, I saw and what appeared to be like what would be in the movies is like a sacrificial altar, right? It looked like there was a star and candles and there's like bones and things. And I reached out to them because I was working on putting a music video together for a friend that it was a darker hip hop song. And I had this idea. So I reached out to this other individual and said, hey, this altar that you have, would you mind having it in a music video? And the first thing they said, well, it depends on what is tell me about the music video. And my idea was that it was going to be like kind of this like altar and then somebody gets possessed. And he was like, absolutely not. Like, I don't want it. That's not what it is. I don't want it involved in your video. I don't want it to be misrepresented. And they kind of like, it was a little bit of a seething response that I just took it in stride. And then what I ended up learning though, is that a lot of what that is it's more or less looking at nature. So the idea of this animal skull that was on this altar, that like everything has its place and its purpose. And I'm not, out here advocating for or against anything. It's just, that's what they had shared. And I found it to be pretty interesting, where as soon as they found out that the primary focus of this video is going to be like this occult type of possession thing, which it was going to be super dark. They stood the ground. They're like, absolutely not. Like, that's not, I don't want people to have the wrong perception of paganism, the altar. And like, they had obviously put a lot of thought in everything that was in their altar. I suppose it's, if you look at what's, in some, you see in Catholic churches, there's somebody nailed somebody, Jesus nailed on a cross. They have their own rituals. Every religion has their rituals. So.
Well, I think so just to even go back into the Catholicism ritual of the priest holding up the wine, the bottle or the chalice of wine, and saying, "This is the blood of Christ."
Yeah.
Okay, so on the outside, somebody looking at that could go, "Whoa, that's really twisted."
Yeah.
I mean, and if you grew up Catholic, you never even thought twice about it.
Yeah, the bread is the flesh of the flesh.
Right. So,
it's interesting. It's an interesting world that we live in. So no, I love that we're able to talk about, what you're involved in, and
the woo-woo stuff.
I'm gonna title this "Woo Woo Medicine," Theresa, just just to let you know. But no, I know we're coming up on that time. You're really busy yourself. It'll be interesting to see what happens. For anybody that's interested, viewers, listeners, check in the About section below. You'll be able to find out all the information in order to contact Theresa and see what she's been up to. And be sure to check out her videos. She's doing daily videos on, giving insights into this medium that she works in. So it'll be interesting to see where you take this, Theresa. I know it's been a big change for you, but you got a kind soul and a great heart, and I really am wishing you the best. So, was there anything that you wanted to talk about before? Did we miss anything, or did I go off on a tangent?
Oh, well, just keep tuned in, guys, because I plan on creating some really fun and life-changing groups this year, and it's just a matter of getting all the pieces together so we can launch it. So, what's this?
I'm excited.
Miracles.
I'm excited to see what happens with your live sessions. I really think, especially for the medium that you're working in, I can see the live sessions for you being just an incredible thing.
I just thought of that. Yeah, I could do live, like you said, live readings.
100%.
We're tuning in to what Shelly needs to know, and then pull a card for her.
I think you just need to have a camera that shows the whole entire space so that people don't think you're like digging through the deck, pulling out certain, you know what I'm saying?
That's your thing. That's your issue.
No, it's great though. I appreciate it, Theresa. Thank you as always for jumping on the show. It's going to be great to touch base here in another week or so and kind of see where you're at and what you've been up to. Until next time, everybody, stay tuned. We got more interviews and stuff coming your way. Until next time, stay safe out there.